All right, it looks like most of the fellows are here, and this session is for you. So welcome. This is the Next Gen Career BoF. It's for the fellows. I am David Huberman. I work at ICANN, and the four of us are here today to talk about how you, right now, can get involved in internet governance. Now, when we were putting together this panel, Elise asked me a really interesting question. And she said, David, well, how are you defining internet governance? And I said, because it's interesting, what internet governance is depends on who you ask and what the context of the conversation is. But to simplify it, I want you to think for just a moment about the country that you live in, okay? Who's the leader of your country? Well, it's a prime minister, maybe, or it's a monarch, maybe. And how did that person become the head of the country? Well, they worked really long, 20, 30, 40 years in their career. They did a lot of things and they worked towards it. And they got elected or selected or they were born into it. And now they're the head of the country. Okay, well, let's think about this in internet terms for a minute. In your government, very often, the head of internet is going to be the Minister of Communications. I think that's very often the title. Who's the Minister of Communications? Well, the Minister of Communications has also worked very hard to get to their position. 10, 20, 30, 40 years of rising up inside the government and the community to become the minister, okay? So these folks, in order to create the rules of how the country works, have had to work for decades. In the internet, it's the exact opposite. None of that is true. The people who make the rules, the people who create technologies and evolve those technologies and decide how those technologies are going to actually get implemented or not, are us. For as long as the internet has existed, and especially over the last 30 years, the person who has the most impact on the internet of tomorrow is you. And it's me, and it's us. It's really worked that way. I'm not trying to sell anything here, right? The internet works from the bottom up. It always has. It's one person or a small group of people who have an idea. And it's very often an engineering idea, or maybe it's an implementation idea, but they have an idea and they say, let's do it this way because it works. And then we show up at conferences like this and say, look, this is how I'm doing it. And this works. And I go, oh, I like that. I'm going to do that too. And it really does happen like that. And that's the point of today's BoF. The point of today's BoF is that you're our fellows and we're so happy to have you here. But guess what? You don't have to wait until you're later in your career to be standing up there just like Ninja and say, this is how to do something. No, you can do it now in the world of internet governance. And to help understand how you can do that, we've put together a wonderful panel, a really diverse panel from diverse experiences. Now, I'm going to introduce everyone and we're going to talk for a little bit, but while we're talking, please don't just sit there. When something strikes you, when you have something to say, stand up. Come up to the mic and let's talk. Let's have a conversation. We're only here for about 35 more minutes together. So it's real short. And as you can see, like most of the people are gone. So it's really informal. So please, let's have a conversation. Now, who are these wonderful people on the stage? Well, I want to tell you about them a little bit. Right here, of course, she doesn't need an introduction with you, but it's Ninja Tadifa. But let me tell you a little bit more about her than you may not know. So Ninja first earned a Bachelor of Science in Information Technology with Latin honors from AMAC Computer College in 2014. And Ninja's been in the communications industry for 9 years now, starting as a service delivery associate at IXS for All, but now working as a senior carrier buying specialist at Rise Incorporated. As you know, she's a former AP-NIC fellow and now is a fellow mentor. But Ninja is also a participant in the AP-NIC Foundation Switch C program and a member of the working groups at Philippines NOC. So Ninja, welcome. Next to Ninja, we have Keisuke. Keisuke Kamamura is a professor. He's a professor of Japanese at the Faculty of Languages and Linguistics at Daito Bunko University up in Tokyo. Keisuke has graciously come down to Kyoto today to join us because he has specialized in the study of internet governance and especially domain name policy and the digital divide. Keisuke served as a national contact for the National and Regional Internet Initiative on Internet Governance, the NRI, here in Japan, and as a member of the select expert panel on domain name policy back when the Japanese government introduced the regulation on domain name registration back in 2016. Welcome, Keisuke. Next to Keisuke is Elise Garrick. And Elise used to be the head of one of the most important things in the entire internet that nobody's ever heard of. And it's called the IANA, the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority. Elise ran the IANA, and as the head of IANA was also the president of PTI, Public Technical Identifiers, which was the organization that was created at the conclusion of the US government's contract with ICANN for these IANA functions. But before that, before she was running the world, she held various management and technical roles at Juniper, Urban Media, and Excite at Home, a big cable ISP. Prior to Excite at Home, Elise was actually the Associate Director of National Networking at Merit Network, which built and operated something called the NSF-Net, which was one of the first internets in the whole world. While at Merit, she worked closely with US regional networks to ensure a smooth transition from the government-sponsored NSF-Net backbone service to early internet service providers. She founded NANOG, one of the 5 super regional NOGs. She co-founded NANOG with her colleague Mark Knopper. Elise was a former member of the Internet Architecture Board. And in 2019, Elise was inducted into the Internet Hall of Fame. So Elise, welcome. Thank you so much. So we have 3 people, all involved in internet governance at different times, in different places, for different reasons. So here, grab the microphone right there, Ninja. Yeah, turn it. So when we were talking outside in the hallway, I asked you a question, and I want you to share your answer with everyone. What was it that motivated you to first become involved in internet governance? What was the issue?
The issue is awareness on the word cookies. I think everyone encountering cookies when every time we do internet browsing, right? But not all of us or not all internet users is aware or knowledgeable enough what does cookie means. So from that time, that's the reason got piqued my interest to explore more about internet governance. Yep.
So you wanted to explore more about internet governance, and so you got involved with the Youth IGF.
Yep, I got attended the YIGF last year, and then we practiced the multi-stakeholder approach, which we are divided in government community, technical community, and private sector. Which what I learned there is every voices from different economies, different communities are well noted and very important to know of it.
So Youth IGF, that is one of the avenues of participation, especially, I mean, it says Youth IGF, especially as a younger person. The IGF is very, very welcome. The IGF is the Internet Governance Forum. It's actually happening right here in this building in just a couple of weeks. Speaking of the IGF, Keisuke, this is something you have been involved with. Tell us, if you will, some of your first experiences with internet governance.
Well, my first engagement with internet governance took place without realizing it is internet governance. So one of the first meetings I attended was INET 98 in Geneva, which was just after the US government released a green paper on the management of DNS. And people started discussing how we should organize the internet. But I didn't realize it was going to be what we now call internet governance. So my engagement emerged very organically. But so that was my beginning. And what was the question? Yeah.
So it's 1998. We haven't even thought of this word internet governance right? We're just trying to make the whole thing work, and we're trying to make it sane. Well, okay, it's 2023. It is 25 years later. Now we have this thing called internet governance. One of the things you've been involved with a lot is in the domain world, in TLDs.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So back then, the internet governance is about numbers and names. Now we have various other issues on top of it, like securities and business interest and industry promotion and so on. But back then, internet governance was very small in the sense that small, and it was very clear-cut issue. And the reason why I was interested in domain name was that it is distributed. Some part of the domain name is distributed to countries and territories. So I try to compare the CCTLD policies across the world. So that was my that was where I started with the study of domain name.
Now, when you were getting involved in that, what was your job? What were you doing?
Oh,
You
yes,
weren't paid to do that,
yes,
right?
yes.
What was your
yes.
job? What were you doing?
That's a good point. I am an academic, so I haven't been very much. I haven't been very much into actual policy making. I try to step aside and see what is going on. So, and I attended various internet governance related meetings and conferences because I wanted to gather information and draw some insights, and to make to draw my research conclusions. So I may be a bit different in the sense that I was not in actual policy making, but I a sort of an outsider or observer. But that way, that is my role. Yeah.
So Keisuke talked about the green paper. This is how ICANN was created all the way back in 1998. But before 1998, Elise, you were working on internet.
I was younger.
Governance. What's that?
I was younger.
You were younger, yes. You were working on internet governance issues. Did you know you were working on internet governance issues?
No, in fact, I still don't know what internet governance actually means,
Sure.
except for IGF and, people who talk way above. I was mostly involved with network and operations. So I think something that I did work on that's governance like is I'm the author of 2 RFCs, 1366 and 1466, which replaced 1366. And those RFCs set up a framework for the creation and the distribution of IP addresses to regional internet registries when and if they were established. When the RFCs were written, the only established RIRs at that time were RIPE in Europe and ARIN. ARIN wasn't even ARIN yet, it was called NSI, but in the North America area. And so what happened is there was a scarcity of IP addresses in that period. We started running out of IPv4. Everybody got scared. They said, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to the rest of the world? Because of course, the US was gobbling up all the IP addresses because that's where TCP/IP and IP originated. And so there were discussions through global groups, engineers and policymakers about, okay, what are we going to do about scarcity of IP addresses? The internet has grown, people use it, it's becoming, like your telephone at home, only better. So I was lucky enough to be involved in all those discussions with people, and we would toss around different ideas. And when we got the RIPE folks on board and we got the US NSI, who were the registry at the time, on board, then I got nominated to talk to John Postel, who, if you don't know his name, you should look him up. He was the original IANA, and he maintained all the records for internet domain names, internet number allocations, and for the standard protocols. So anyway, at that point in time, I got involved in it, and it was my job to kind of bring the conversations to a point where everybody in the room would agree that, okay, we'll reserve a certain portion of the IPv4 address space for potential regions of the world. And there had been debates at the time whether, why not country by country? Well, then everybody'd get like this much. I mean, there are a lot of countries. And we thought, since RIPE's already kicked off the European organization, which had a framework, and there was a framework within the United States, well, let's look at it as region. There's the North America region, there's a RIPE region, Asia Pacific region, South American, Latin American region, and an Africa region, or the Middle East Africa region. So that's how I got involved in governance. But if you'd asked me then, and if you ask me now, I don't really know what governance is. But I think it's bringing the right parties together to discuss how to solve a problem and to come up with a solution that's mutually agreeable.
So let me ask you a question. You were working on this, you built these RFCs, but before that, what did you get your degree in?
Oh, you don't want to know.
No, I do. We definitely want to know.
Okay, I have a degree, a Bachelor of Arts degree, and it's in political science and French. And my whole goal in life was to be a French teacher.
So
But that didn't happen.
So that's an important lesson for all of us. Elise started off wanting to be a French teacher.
No, I didn't want to be.
Oh.
I just didn't know what else I was going to do until the Foreign Service took me.
There you go. So preparing to be a French teacher, studying political science, and now she's in the Internet Hall of Fame.
It's all luck.
It's not all just luck. It's also hard work. Being in the right place in the right time really does help, for sure. But there were a lot of other people in that same place at that same time, and they didn't do what you did.
Well, but you have to have a nurturing environment. And I was very fortunate to be hired by Merit, which was the state-funded organization in all the universities in Michigan. And so they were very interested in computer communications between the universities. So it was a very nurturing environment for exploration and trying things. And sometimes they worked and sometimes they didn't necessarily work. But when we got the NSFNet award, well, we had to make them work. And that was a really, really fun time.
So Elise mentioned mentorship, leadership. Ninja, when you first started getting involved, when you went to Youth IGF, eventually you started coming to APNIC as a fellow, and here you are again. What are some of the things that helped you? Like, did you have people guiding you? Did you find a mentor? Did you find inspiration? What was it that you took the first step, the very brave first step, and got involved, but something kept you coming back? And what was that?
To develop I had got a support and mentor from the APNIC too. And I had a mentor, Jocelyn Bateman, who also encouraged me to push myself more, to believe on myself, omit the limiting beliefs on myself too. That's why. And also there's like someone helps me and I would like to help other people too.
So one of the things that we see in the APNIC community is that as a fellow, you start to get to know people. You get to start to know their names. And the really cool part is if you keep up the conversation afterwards, your relationships grow with those people. And as your relationships grow with those people, that turns into opportunities for you and for them. It's a two-way thing. Very important. So, Keisuke, if you think about your experiences, so 1998, 25 years, and you look here and you see our wonderful fellows, what is a piece of advice you can impart? What is something that you've learned that you'd like to share about being involved and having your voice heard?
I may be echoing Ninja, but being connected is very important in participating in any meeting or conference on internet governance. Getting to know people is your asset. So try to meet people and keep in touch with them. That's one thing. And I also encourage you to keep attending meetings. So don't try not to give up. And one more thing, for you to participate in internet governance dialogues or discussions, you have to bring in some insights or some of your expertise. So be professional or be expert. As David mentioned earlier, I was invited as a member of the government panel on domain name policy regulation. Before that, I conducted a lengthy study on domain name registration policies across the world. So that insight or that my findings was appreciated by my colleagues and government officers. So being heard, for you to be heard, you have to prepare yourself in your field of expertise. And I guess I had another point, but I'm not sure. So, but that's about. Internet governance. Internet governance is internet self-governance. So internet governance is about yourself, not someone else's. So keep attending meetings, be professionals, and internet governance is internet self-governance. That is my message.
Yeah, please.
What advice I can give to you is just begin with the fundamentals of the IGF. Also engage with the diverse stakeholders and be informed in the current issues in internet governance, and also be patient, be persistent, and advocate to have a open and secured and inclusive internet community.
That's really good advice. Thank you, Ninja. Thank you, Keisuke. So Elise, let's talk a little bit about the fact that internet governance is more than just IGF. It's more than just ICANN. It's a lot of things in a lot of different avenues. APNIC, we're here at APNIC. There's a very real governance function going on here. It's local or regional, but it's a very important function about the management of number resources, ASs, ASNs, IPv4, IPv6, and then the infrastructures around them, RPKI and IRR, and lots of all the things that we're talking about. You've been working on this for many decades.
Yeah.
And you've been in a lot of conversations and you've watched it evolve. What are some of the things when you look out at the fellows and they're looking at you and they're thinking about how can I be the next Elise? How can I be the next Keisuke? How can I be the next Ninja? What are some of the things you've actually learned about being effective in conversations and in dialogues about these types of issues?
So what have I learned? Lots of things, but in a nutshell, one of them is to listen, even though I may think I was right all the time. I'm not always right. And it's important to have that conversation and be open to hearing different opinions. since I got to be a manager, then I could decide whether I wanted to accept those opinions or not. But once you're not a manager, if you're just starting out, you definitely want to present your ideas in a palatable way. And what I mean by palatable way is more as a discussion, like say, I was thinking about, the fact that we don't have enough IPv4 addresses. What can we do about it? And have that dialogue and listen to what the other person says. And then if you have your idea of how you might be able to address it, then say, oh, but what about blah, or something like that. So it's really important to not come across too aggressively, but you can't be timid. So don't be timid, but also be open to hearing different sides of the story and realize you may not always get everything you wanted. Even if you get a little, that's a step in the right direction. So I don't know if that's answering your question at all.
No, it's
I was
okay.
just rambling.
Yeah, so that leads me to a question, Kaisuke. How have you navigated over the years dealing with the different cultures that are in these conversations? You're from Japan, Elise is from the United States, Ninja's from the Philippines. These are three very different cultures. We have different cultural norms about how we communicate, about how we talk, about how we act, about how we hold our bodies, about how we eat, lots of different things. And that's both kind of a feature and a bug, because in internet governance, we have to be aware of all of that while also trying to get the engineering right? So as a professor in Tokyo, and then all of a sudden you find yourself talking about the green paper in the United States, IGF, I forget where that was in 1998. But what are some of the things, how are some of the strategies you've used for being culturally aware, but also being effective?
Wow, big question. I don't have a quick answer, but these meetings like this one is a mixture of people and mixture of various cultures. So no one knows. You can learn more about multicultural communication than various meetings like IPNIC and IGF and so on. So so this is the practice field. So to train your multicultural understanding and multicultural communication. So what I want to say is that don't be afraid. And this is think of these meetings as a learning opportunity. Yeah, that's about it.
That's a great answer. Thank you. Please.
I just wanted to reiterate some of the things, but everyone sort of thinks, since I was on the National Science Foundation network, that we were all Americans. Not necessarily. My boss was a German. My colleagues were a Chinese woman and an Indian man. And that was the three of us to start. And we continued to hire any graduate students or any students or people. It didn't matter if they were American or where they came from or what their ethnicity was. So at that point, you really learn you have to, that's why I said, listen, because people have different ways of communicating. And you can't assume that what you've heard is what they really wanted you to hear. So if you're questioning it, you, again, gently or patiently, as Ninja said earlier, if you think there's a communication issue, don't just jump to a conclusion. Don't make a story in your head of what that person might have meant. Try and actually have a dialogue and figure it out and say, did you really mean that I look ugly today? Or something like that, you know. It could be some just simple thing that would then like nag at you. But try and have those conversations so that you understand each other and can work together better.
So we're getting towards the end of time. We'll keep talking. I have lots of questions I can ask, but please, I just do want to encourage you, if you have something to ask of this wonderful panel, yeah, come on up, talk.
Hello. I am Srimal from Sri Lanka. I came as an ethnic fellow. I just have a question regarding the country top level domain purchasing. So when come to purchasing the top level domain through the local registrar, the price and when someone trying to purchase from the international registrar, the price is more than 20 times. So is it a country policy or is a governance? So this is regarding something we need to address under the internet governance.
Well, it depends on the type of domain name you're talking about. If GTLD.
Yeah.
TLD. Okay, then maybe Elisa.
I don't know what each country does. I'm sorry, even as the IANA, the contractual part of that happened with ICANN and the various registries and registrars. And so what happens is ICANN has a policy with them, an agreement that there's a certain price they can charge and that ICANN gets another percentage. But you have to remember, I've retired 4 years ago, so I'm not really up to date on what that policy might be. But I know that there's an agreement between ICANN and the registries and registrars that take care of that.
Good afternoon. My name is Neil Dejos from Philippines. I have a question with regards to the internet governance. So are there any recent developments or initiatives in the field of internet governance that we should be aware of?
So the question was, are there new developments in the general world of internet governance that the fellows should be aware of? That's a big question. It's a very good question. So as we've sort of hinted up here, internet governance is a big thing. Elise doesn't even know what it means. It's a lot of fields. It's IGF, it's ICANN, it's APNIC. It is hallway conversations at local network operator group meetings. It's assemblies of like-minded people who are trying to solve a problem by applying either rules or applying an implementation that makes sense, right? So what's going on in the world of internet development? We have, of course, conversations about artificial intelligence. We have conversations, what's that? We have conversations about IPv6, a lot of conversations about privacy. And that's a funny one because different cultures and different countries have different expectations of what does privacy mean. I live in the United States. I have no expectation of data privacy because it's not part of our culture or part of our laws, really. Maybe it should be, but it really hasn't been. You ask the same question to a European and they'll say, what? My data belongs to me. Absolute privacy. This is guaranteed. And so those conversations become very interesting in internet governance because we have 200 countries, people from all over the world, and we don't even have a common set of expectations or values on privacy. So that's a very thorny one in the world of internet governance. What else?
I think it's hard for us to give you what high-level policy is country by country because it is like a hierarchy. So each country can make policies and regulations that are different than in other countries. But the IGF, their goal is to come to a common understanding of policies that will be generally applied. And so since I really don't play in that field, I just want you to keep in mind that it is a hierarchy and you can influence what happens on your local level. For instance, back in the other century, when we did the NSFNet backbone, one of the reasons we were able to do it was because telco regulations were not applied to the internet at that time. Now that's governance. And that's something that was done by the government and in the US and the regulations they put on. Other countries probably had all sorts of different rules and still do. So I'm sorry, I can't answer your question any better than that.
Great. Okay, we've got time for one more question. Please, my friend.
Okay, thank you for the last one. I'm Michael from Indonesia Internet Exchange. So actually my question is about how we can solve the problem of low literacy. So I think like when we apply the policy, how let's say we apply the LPKI policy, we apply the ERR policy, how we can fight the low literacy issue. Let's say when we apply the policy, let's say I will apply the policy the next month. Okay. Well, when the next month was come, I just apply the policy and some prefix will drop and some links and some service will drop. And the problem is some people cannot aware of it because we already announced it on the email, we already announced in the conference, we already announced in even on the WhatsApp group. I mean, we already announced the new policy, the new rules for even better ecosystem that we're gonna build. But some people not being aware of it. And when we apply the policy, they are complaining, even a hard complaint. Hey, why didn't you tell us about it? Probably my question is more like how your experience and how the any study case, how to solve this kind of problem. Thank you.
Yeah, Michael, thank you. That's a great question. I think that's something we've struggled with the entire time because you have to show up. And when you show up, that's when you learn about new policies. And that's when you learn that things are changing underneath you. Like one of the funny parts about life is we learn something and we get good at it. And before we know it, it's changed and we have to learn it again and it has to evolve. And policy is very much like that, especially internet policy, because as time moves forward, we learn how to do things better and make packets move faster or make rules that work for today that might not have been needed yesterday. But in order to do that, people need to show up. And once those people show up, we learn about it and then we have to disseminate it. And how do we disseminate it? And that's difficult. And there is a low latency there for sure. So that is all the time we have for today. I want to say thank you very much for coming. Elise, Kaisuke, Ninja, thank you very much. Now, your homework, it's very important. At the social tonight, during the APNIC conference tomorrow and on Thursday, please come up to Ninja, come up to Kaisuke, come up to Elise, introduce yourself, make a new friend, and do that not just with them, but everybody here, because that's how you're really going to grow. So thanks, everybody.